Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third episode of Two Games at Once, Undertale, and Cave Story. In the previous episode, we made our way to Snowdin. As well, we constructed the bomb after acquiring all of the ingredients. In this episode, Undertale will not be doing very much, mostly just exploring the town, while Cave Story makes its way into the main plot of the game. In Undertale, we just spent all of our money, pretty much, on a small armor upgrade, which hopefully will be helping us in the future, as well as perhaps buying too many healing items, but honestly, if we're going to try this, we need to be as prepared as we possibly can. And the benefit to these items is that you can accidentally eat them twice, so it takes much longer to actually go through them all. We have just rescued Kazuma from the building he was trapped in up to this point, and we have also met Booster. And the two of them will be making their way back to the teleporter, which we unfortunately have to walk to, while they get to very quickly fly all the way to. We're just introducing ourselves to the locals. We may recognize a few familiar faces. And we managed to make all of our way back to the teleporter. Along the way, not much at all happened. We don't need to worry about the jellyfish anymore, so luckily that will be the last time we have to fight them. It is now time for the showdown with Papyrus, which, for a lot of people, wouldn't be much of a challenge, but we will see just how hard it is to try to split my focus between it and some meager progress in Cave Story. The fight with Papyrus was actually the fight I was hoping would be synced up with the fight with Balfrog, but unfortunately there was far too much dialogue in Undertale to keep pace. Not that it still would have made much of a difference, but Balfrog is certainly more challenging than listening to Booster explain to us what exactly is going on. And certainly something that works towards my benefit is I don't necessarily need to remember how to fight Papyrus. That, as far as I'm aware, most fights that are boss battles, you simply need to spare over and over again, so there's no trick to remember. Although, that being said, every boss does have something akin to an Easter egg about them, but we'll get to that later. Now, I've noticed that this particular mechanic, which forces you to now move as though you are in a platformer in Undertale, doesn't actually work very well when you need to shoot enemies that are above you in Cave Story. And while it seems to be that the platforming is relatively easy when you're just taking damage after damage after damage, things can very quickly go south if you let them, and we fall down all the way from what we just did at the same time as getting defeated for the first time by Papyrus. So we quickly make our way back up the platforms we just fell down, so that we can see who it was we saw when we entered the sand zone. And it's none other than someone who looks very similar to us, and it seems that our friends, or future friends, all want to fight us at this current moment. And to be perfectly honest, this boss fight coming up in Cave Story was not actually something I was at all worried about. Like I said before, the tank strategy is very good for a lot of fights in this game. Until enemies start getting larger amounts of health, we can simply just stand there and shoot faster than they can shoot or run into us. Both games are a pacifist route, so we will not be joking about ending the Mimiga's life. And we are introduced to Curly Brace, who doesn't serve too much of a purpose in this game, but we'll be seeing more of her later. She actually has a very interesting proposition for us, where we could perhaps acquire a new weapon, which I was very tempted to take, as it will make pretty much all of the platforming in the game relatively easy. But, just like the Bub line, while it is great at level 3 and you can simply hold down the button to keep shooting, so it allows me to focus a little more on Undertale, unfortunately, it doesn't stay at level 3 very long, and it tends to do very little when it's not level 3. Papyrus, again, makes short work of us. It's very easy to die to him when you just stand there and get hit 3 or 4 times in a row every time. While I have definitely toyed around with playing 2 games at once in the past, I certainly hope that I will get much better at it in the future. Thinking back to the platforming that we just did before the boss fight as well, has me dreading many things in this game, but none quite as much as the balcony. If we ever get there, it will be quite the task making our way to the top. Grabbing this health upgrade won't make too much of a difference in the upcoming boss fights, I feel, but it's not like I'm going to be turning them down. It makes sense that we would be struggling somewhere in Cave Story in the future, just as much as we're struggling right now to fight Papyrus, who has so far beaten us twice, and very nearly beaten us again. Now all that's left is to survive Papyrus's final attack to call an end to this fight. That being said, anyone who simply wants to face this challenge, or maybe is having difficulty in general with Papyrus, there is a very simple solution if you don't particularly care to face him as your first difficult boss. All you have to do is simply get beaten 3 times by Papyrus. Now, I could have certainly done that very simply, but I wanted to face him, see if I could actually overcome the challenge, and while it did give me quite a bit of trouble, it is certainly possible. But after that 3rd defeat, when he captures you, you make your way back to Papyrus, and he offers you an interesting proposition. It's that you don't actually need to fight him. You can simply say no, and the game will proceed more or less as though you had beaten him, and he will admit defeat. The area we're in Cave Story certainly has its number of challenges. As I mentioned before, we've reached the point in the game where every enemy does good damage, and if I'm not paying attention for even a few seconds, I can simply die immediately. And of course, we're going to be friends with Papyrus. I'm not sure we will be doing a lot of the additional side quests, I suppose you could call them, but it's certainly an option. If we needed to make large amounts of progress in Cave Story, we could certainly go on a date with Papyrus. The boss fight that we're going up against, Omega, has always been a very, very easy fight. In fact, I didn't even bother using what makes him so easy. Because he spends so much time in the ground, and then he eventually jumps out of the ground, the fireball makes very, very quick work of him. But I didn't even think it was all that necessary. It's funny that most of the enemies we have fought in order to get to him are more difficult than he is. If only I had remembered the dog in the bar, but I didn't. Though I did mention that we're not going to be going for all of the achievements. I'm sure that the alien medal wouldn't even be reasonable. Having beaten both Papyrus and Omega, we will make our way back so we can say hi to Jenka, and that will bring the third episode to a close. A little bit shorter, I know, but still. I thank you for joining me, and I wish you a good day.